Change is not black and white. Okay. The biggest problem that I face, and you guys can maybe relate, maybe not. You might be thinking, who is this asshole that's talking to me through a camera? But for me, the biggest problem with change is that I treat it like it's a black and white thing, meaning that it's either one thing or the other, meaning you change or you don't change, right? And yet, change is actually kind of simple, right? It's not easy, but it is simple. And what I mean by that is, of course, like let's say you have a job that involves picking up logs. God knows why that's your job, but let's say your job is to pick up logs from point A, put it down point B a mile down the road. That's your job, right? It's a simple job. Point A, point B, pick things up, put them down. Not a difficult job at all. But I wouldn't say that it's an easy job. It's physically demanding, picking up giant logs and moving them back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But it is a simple job, right? Change is not let's say, it's not, it's simple, right? It's something that anybody can do, something that anybody kind of intuitively, instinctively knows how to do. And yet, so much of us, so many of us, we struggle just to kind of finish the things that we think we should do. So again, using myself as an example, uh, it's always got to be one thing or the other, right? I gotta go out. If you're going to change a diet, for instance, usually the way that I handle it, which is not handling it, of course, but I'll always say, all right, well then let's have like a big buffet. Let's eat snacks. Let's just treat my body like I don't know, like a Playboy magazine, and just really just do whatever you want to it. And then you think to yourself, I think to myself, well, the next day, tomorrow will be different, and I'll start, and then that never works. Never works. I mean, it's easy enough to understand a simple change: eat less, move more. There's your diet right there. But it's very difficult. It's a difficult thing to do. Simple steps, difficult job, difficult thing. So I treat change like a black and white thing, but change is often not like that, right? I mean, even when you think about the way that things change in our lives, it usually doesn't happen overnight. We usually notice things at some point, like, for example, even relationships, right? Maybe you fall out of love. It doesn't just happen like automatically. One day you wake up and you think, oh, you know what? This guy smells like shit and I don't love him anymore. I'm going to go ahead and go fuck his brother. Like, that's just an example. You don't have to take that to heart. Don't have sex with your partner's brother, just as a general rule, I guess, unless they're really hot. But in any case, things like that, it happens over time. Like you kind of fall out of love with people. Things happen. You changes that happen within yourself. There's small little things, kind of like every day, that kind of build up, right? Same thing with a diet or exercise, right? You don't have more muscles overnight, but eventually 3 months later, you've exercised, you've taken some steps to make yourself healthier, and then you have a better looking body, or at the very least, you feel better, right? And all of this change, all of this is just to say that the way that I handle it has never been able to work. It's never been a good motivation for me to change by just assuming that, well, I have the strength, the willpower, the ability to just take this seemingly and maybe obviously simple thing and just easily following through with it by simply waking up the next day and assuming and hoping that everything will be different and I will be a completely different person. But that's not how change works. Just having an attitude or an idea about change doesn't really affect you as a person, right? The person that's changing is not something and not someone that just wakes up anew like a phoenix rising from the ashes on a random Wednesday afternoon. That's not really what happens. What does end up happening is that you kind of do things less. You stop giving a shit about the things that hurt you. So I'm going to use an example from my own life, another example. When I was younger, much younger, 21 I was at the time, 21 to 22, I liked cocaine. Oh, cocaine, so good. Sometimes, honestly, I think if someone were to offer me a really, really good line of cocaine, like a Led Zeppelin level line of cocaine, would I say no? I would like to think that I wouldn't, that I would say no. But there's always like a 2% chance that I'd be like, yeah, let's go for it. But ideally, I'd like to say no. And I haven't touched it since I was 23. On my 23rd birthday, actually, is the last time I had cocaine. That's a whole different story, though. So, anyway, for those 2 years, I did cocaine pretty regularly. Kind of a fun thing to do, wrong crowd or the right crowd, depending on your perspective. And it was just the thing that became a habit eventually. And of course, over time, it became an addiction. Like that's how things start, right? And just like how addictions start, it's small things that build up over time, right? And then how addictions end is that small things stop over time. Now, I remember the moment that I stopped doing cocaine. You could look at that day, that moment, that 23rd birthday, and go, well, that was the day that I stopped something. And truth be told, of course, there was something that happened that day that made me not do it anymore. But uh, it was already kind of declining before then. I was getting tired of using it. I was using it less. It was getting, it was expensive, of course. It was just becoming something that I didn't really want to be in my life, and yet I still found myself doing it. And then something, of course, happened that made it seem like it was just this overnight change, like I just quit cold turkey. But that really wasn't the case, right? And that's kind of the funny thing about change. Nobody really notices like a negative change happening, but we always want a positive change to occur, and we want it to occur very, very quickly. But like cocaine, I put it off for a year, not said no, 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 not doing it, not doing it. And then one day I just maybe I was in a bad mood or something, and I did the first line of cocaine off of like an AC/DC CD in the back of a Honda Civic. It's fucking outside of a dive bar in California. I mean, if you're gonna try your first line of cocaine, I guess there's not any better place to do it than in the back of a Honda Civic in a small town in Southern California. You got to pick your moments, I suppose. But it built over time, right? Maybe it started off one time a week, then it was twice a week, then it was 4 times a week. You know what I mean? And these kinds of things, it just builds, and nobody knows it. But if we can get ourselves into these situations without paying attention, then surely we can also get out of these situations, kind of ironically, without paying attention. So I put so much emphasis on trying to change the logical steps that I need to take, the things that will surely happen tomorrow, later, eventually. I believe in those kinds of things. And yet the next day, it's pretty much the same old story, right? And it's the emphasis and the pure energy that I'm putting towards trying to change somehow ironically gets in the way of the actual change, right? Because just like how any negative habit starts slowly, creeps up onto you, don't pay attention, you can actually change in the same kind of way. It doesn't have to be so black and white. It's just something that kind of starts to gradually leave your life. For me personally, it would be like marijuana. I really like weed because just being high is much better than being sober. And, I'm half kidding, obviously. But, it's not like an ideal thing. Like you shouldn't have like a habit of smoking weed. That's not, I don't think it's like a really good idea. At least it's not a good idea for me. And it's been something that I've wanted to just quit. But every time I try to quit smoking weed overnight, it just absolutely doesn't work. Right. But going from smoking like 3 joints or 4 joints a week to smoking 2 joints a week, and you're just gradually lowering it, like not putting so much pressure on yourself to change overnight, to treat it like a black and white thing, like it has to happen, and if it doesn't happen like this and in this way and on this day, I'm a fucking loser and I suck and everything's terrible and I can't do it and it's difficult and it's impossible. It is difficult to change, but it isn't like it is simple. It's not actually convoluted or complicated. It's a very simple process. It just requires a little bit of letting go. So not caring, ironically, about the change in of itself, and just gradually allowing yourself to go through the motions and watching it kind of slowly but surely start to kind of go away from your life. This is how change has actually occurred in my life. And I think it's how it happens in most people. But the thing that I struggle with the most is this black and white attitude towards change. It needs to happen this kind of way. And if it doesn't happen that way, then am I really changing? And if I don't have the willpower and the strength to do it this particular way, then doesn't that make me an unspiritual, weak, kind of ego-driven human being, right? And these thoughts and these kinds of things, these ideas, they plague us, especially people that consider themselves spiritual to any degree, because usually people that consider themselves spiritual have a sense of importance about themselves. At the very least, I don't necessarily mean that negatively, but at the very least, they feel that they're stronger, that they deserve more, that they can be better, that they should be better, right? A lot of spiritual people have this like a guilt complex about their worth and about where they should be at in their life, right? And if you remove that self-importance, as maybe positively driven as it may or may not be, if you remove that influence, all you're left with is the actual action of change, which is a gradual, more slow process, but it actually works. And as difficult as it may or may not be, it's a simple process that eventually kind of just takes care of itself.